E adesso cederò appunto la parola a Matthias Krismer, che si occupa appunto è responsabile dell'approvvigionamento della Swarovski. Vi parlerà lui del progetto, ma ricordiamoci che appunto in questo momento tutti gli operatori che arrivano sul mercato si sentono anche in dovere di responsabilizzare bene il loro prodotto, di dare delle garanzie al produttore, al consumatore finale, e in questo momento si parla veramente tanto di responsabilità sociale, e questa responsabilità sociale non è solo sociale, ma è una responsabilità ambientale ed è anche una responsabilità economica. Prima vi ho accennato anche a Mogok, e pensate che noi abbiamo un'associazione che in questo momento ci ha dato il suo patrocinio, che è l'Asso Gemme, che ha un progetto con l'associazione dei gioiellieri e venditori di gemme e minatori del Myanmar, proprio per un progetto del genere, per un progetto affinché ci sia un'estrazione anche corretta secondo le norme, che ci sia protetta la salute dei minatori, sia protette il personale che ci lavora, quindi no lavoro minorile, no soldi che possono arrivare da conflitti, eccetera. Quindi vedete che come le aziende sono molto sensibili a questo discorso, e quindi ti cedo la parola appunto per parlare del progetto in Swarovski.
Grazie Loredana. Thank you for the nice handover to this closing talk of this session on responsible sourcing. We heard now about a lot of how to know where the material comes from, and with gemological methods. Now we are talking more of internal processes of companies, make sure materials are coming from known sources and that those minerals are traded in a responsible way. Let's see if the film is working.
A tiny dot of light in the middle of nowhere, precious like a gemstone. Earth, the place we call home. Over millions of years, deep beneath the surface, nature shaped tiny miracles, the essence of purity and beauty. Here, in the heart of northwest Brazil, topaz is being recovered by the garimpeiros as part of their day-to-day work. It is an additional source of income for them without needing to break any fresh earth, and the raw, unique foundation for the stunning Swarovski genuine topaz. We are proud to work with the local community, as we believe that all Swarovski products should contribute to a better world. We are also investing in a food program and actively support nonprofit organizations in restoring the Brazilian forests. Here in the stunning landscape of Tanzania, rubies have been collected for more than 100 years. It is the realm of the Maasai, who earn their livelihoods trading high-quality gemstones, and thus set the stage for one of our finest products, the dazzling Swarovski genuine ruby. We are very proud to work hand-in-hand with the local communities. By building local capacities, we are constantly striving to secure sustainable prosperity, now and for the future.
The first part of the video was a little bit out of scope. It's just on a similar project on topaz, but actually very similar setup with rubies from the second part of the video. I will just pass through. Rui already mentioned the piece. It's the ruby, a piece from Tanzania, from Longido, and actually talking about colored gemstones, modern colored gemstone supply chain. Everyone knows maybe the number of about 80% of all colored gemstones are mined by artisanal and small-scale mining, which means by individuals in the least developed countries. We have seen in the last talks about where gemstones come from, basically from Eastern Africa or African countries, and also from Southeast Asia. And overall, gemstones are traded through those individual miners and traders out of those countries into trading hubs like Asian trading hubs like Bangkok or Hong Kong. And when we started with those projects, actually our know-how about where the stones come from were actually confined to dealers' promises that the stones come from a certain country in Africa, or even we knew about the stones come from Africa. Actually, Africa is a big country. It's not really a matter of traceability, knowing that rubies comes from Africa. So we decided years ago to jump into let's say lifelong journey almost for us to understand where the stones come from and to follow the stones from our production sites upstream to the mining site. And so we could actually start developing sourcing projects where we could really include the mining community, the traders, and to become, on the one hand side, more traceable but also more responsible by contributing positive change along the supply chain. So from our doors, from our factories, upstream to the mining sites, with a strong focus on mining, especially on artisanal mining. If you're dealing with colored gemstones, you're faced with artisanal mining, with individuals just mining with very simple tools with their hands, with simple non-mechanized methods in an unorganized form in countries with not low power of government power and without any mining strategies. Therefore, we went into this journey, which we tried to describe with these 6 pillars, starting from the first question, okay, what is traceability? Where can we find rubies? And how is this supply chain? So how many stakeholders are involved in such a supply chain, and how are they acting actually? Is everyone behaving ethically? Moving forward to the third pillar, which is more focused on, okay, there is not everything perfect in our supply chains, which is maybe true for every mineral supply chain, but especially in colored gemstone supply chain with 80% of artisanal miners, artisanal mining involved in the global supply. Actually, there are a lot of gaps identified in terms of social and ecological issues. And the next step, actually, what we faced when going to Tanzania, but also to Brazil, what you saw before in the video, you see there are a lot of problems in the local communities, especially on a mine level. So we have seen, okay, you have to involve also the community, not only those people directly involved, maybe the gem supply chain, but also those people who are really affected by the mining, which means local people living there, but not really involved, but affected by the mining. And the last 2 pillars I won't touch so much because it's more about our own processes, which are, of course, focusing more towards internal environmental and social standards, which are more covered to certifications and retail partnerships. Okay? Okay. First, no, back. The first step was for us to understand the nature of a supply chain, the traceability actually, to say every single stone can be tracked back to the very mining location, to the pit where it is extracted from. And it was a long journey to really understand through which hands those stones are going. It's years and years to come to really understand fully understand a colored gemstones supply chain. And in that turn, we started to talk to the people along the supply chain and to start with assessing the local standards, and the behavior of people in our direct supply chain. And we started conducting first assessments to see, okay, how are they working? What are the standards there? Do they wear hard hats? Do they have their personal protective equipment? And this was actually a development we could take out of the so-called Colored Gemstone Working Group. There's an industry collaboration with big names like Tiffany, Cartier, and among others. And within this group, which is facilitated by an advisory firm from the UK, which is really specialized in dealing with metal and also gemstone supply chains, especially focusing on artisanal and small-scale mining. We tried to build with this group or within this group and the help of this third-party advisory firm to build a tool where we can really prove the pain points along the supply chain, where we can see the real gaps in actually starting from asking very critical questions like, is there child labor at the mine sites? Are children involved in the gemstone supply chain? But also simpler questions like, are all the local legal requirements met, for example? And with this tool of this Colored Gemstone Working Group, which is actually not a real standard, but it's actually something we tried to set as a baseline. We could do this first assessment in Tanzania, but also in Brazil, where you can really assess the situation on the local mine site, but also in the trading of the gemstones, in the export of the gemstones towards our factory. So we could identify all stakeholders and go through the supply chain with a regular third-party assessment of the local situation, which actually ended up in this third pillar, which is actually the most critical one, because you can have a traceability, you know where the stone comes from. It's maybe from a good source or from a less good source. You do the due diligence and you understand, okay, there are huge problems in the supply chain, and there is almost no colored gemstones supply chain without real social and economic problems, and which ended up in our strategy in going for building capacity at the local mine site along the supply chain through the traders by making sure that basic standards of health, safety, and environmental practices are met, and that we can support local miners to really improve their behavior in mining, but also in processing. And as mentioned earlier, going to a mine site, really a gem mine site, or areas where gems are mined, you will detect a lot of different bigger problems which are not really confined to only the mining itself, but also to the local community, which is impacted due to mining. We have moved to Tanzania, to Longido, and actually there it is a very nice story of how this mine site actually was developed. We heard before it's a long-standing mine actually for mining those blocks for the gem carving, where you see those nice little pieces of skulls, for example. So if you Google it, you find a lot of funny things which were carved out of this material, which is actually zoisite and ruby, this green and red combination. And actually the land is on Maasai, the mine is on Maasai land, and the local Maasai learned to break up just the waste material of this mine, which is actually then exported. These blocks are exported to Asia most likely, and those Maasai learned we could just use this waste material by breaking it up, hammering it, and extracting small, tiny, clean, nice rubies. More for the small size, so we talk about 2, 3, 4, 5 millimeters. This is really big for this location. It's basically small calibrated stones coming out there, but those local Maasai, they learned to use this material as additional income. As maybe everybody knows, Maasai are nomads, so they are not used just to settle down. They move around with their livestock around East Africa, actually. And all on a sudden, the Maasai, by using those materials, they were just settling down, building real houses. And of course, everyone can imagine there are a lot of infrastructure missing there. And what we find there is that there are 10,000 people just settling down. Maasai have a lot of children. There are a lot of children with not too much school capacity. There are 700 children with, in 7 classes with 5 or 6 teachers. Actually, a lot of children with no schooling capacity. And so we've seen, okay, rubies has impacted Maasai to settle down at this place, creating those social problems actually by not having enough infrastructure for sending kids to the school. And so we decided in this first step to engage with the community and to reduce the impact of our acting in terms of we buy ruby from there, we just force or just we convince them to go there to collect ruby because that's just our trigger to them to collect ruby by supporting the local school in Tanzania or in Longido or nearby Longido in that case, it's the Mundarara village, and by supporting the local government with some additional school buildings and also teacher accommodations to move there some more teachers in to support the local children to be, or that they can go to school actually at the end of the day. These are actually some bullet points of this supply chain project we conducted now since almost 4 years. So it's a long journey to come really to some prosperity. The material which was going through, it's actually a so-called annulite, which is nothing else than a combination of ruby in zoisite, this bright green. On this piece I send it through, it's just, there's no annulite, it's just only a dark amphibole mineral. And this unused annulite deposit is actually investigated by those Maasai men and women, and they collect actually, not only for us, it's actually for the open market of course, but they collect high quality rubies and trade it to our contractors which do the proper exporting. It's an extra income for the local Maasai, and actually these activities forced Maasai to settle down in that area, and it was the first time that we could conduct a real assessment with a responsible sourcing tool, asking all those crucial questions about responsibility, about traceability, and making sure that the mine sites comply to the minimum standards. But there is to say, we focus not on having or raising the bar for the standard, because it's pretty clear if you have a very high expectation for a gemstone supply chain, it will fail always. We are just more focusing on the fact that we try to work on a capacity building to support the local community to really become better, to become more compliant in their terms. And therefore, we ended up or initiated first training and capacity building actions with the miners and also with the community by supporting the local school. And these are some key words to our industry working group, the so-called colored gemstone working group, consisting of those bigger brands like Cartier, Gemfields, Kering, LVMH, Musso, Tiffany, and Van Cleef and Arpels. And those brands were just decided to sit together years ago and to work on a due diligence tool for mineral supply chains and the outcome was that we could now, or can now, use this tool to ask questions and make assessment along the supply chain in our gemstone supply chains. Okay, that's it. Thank you.